I mean, come on, just look at that. You know this is going to be awesome. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about Lord of a Shattered Land by Howard Andrew Jones, the first in the Hanuvar Chronicles, and which came out should be yesterday, because I was trying to get this as close to release date as possible here. This was a copy that was sent to me by the author. Of course, doesn't affect the review in any way, but I was really excited for this because I previously talked about and read his Ringsworn trilogy, which I really enjoyed, and it did a lot of cool things. That kind of had some homage to Zelazny's Amber Chronicles. This one, though, is just full-bore sword and sorcery, sword and sandals kind of thing. And it almost felt like it was like a combination of Conan and Waylander and like adding in like a Monster of the Week element while still having like a lot of heart. There is so much going on in here with this story, with action, with great characters, with an overall story, while still having each chapter, each part of it actually feel almost like its own self-contained story as well. So I had a really, really good time with this. So like I said, this did come out yesterday. Definitely check it out. I will have a link to it in the description. But let's talk a little bit about this. So I mentioned this is, of course, sword and sorcery, and I mean, like, you can tell. Just looking at this, you would think for sure this was a book from the 80s, and you know, very intentional with the design to kind of get that thing. And so, you know, many people might not have read a lot of sword and sorcery. I would be among them. I have not read a ton of it, but you can definitely feel those elements in it. But the thing that was the most interesting here with it is, I have to say, like I said, the story structure and the pacing, because this is set up, I think there are like 15 chapters. I could be wrong. I could just look, but we're not going to do that. We're going to go with 15. But each chapter has multiple parts in it and sections, and each one does kind of feel like its own short story, really. And it's telling a self-contained story, and I use the term Monster of the Week because it did kind of feel like that as our main character's traveling around and coming across new challenges, new monsters or types of magic or enemies in general, and doing that all while still telling the main story. So it was an interesting way to do it because you feel like you're reading different passages. This is also set up where it's the ancestor of a character that originally wrote this story that's kind of like edited it and is retelling it now. And so there are a few annotations here and there kind of explaining things, and it's done really as if it's a story being told. So it being in different parts like that makes sense both in world, and it's just a really interesting way to read it. And it's not something you get a whole lot anymore. And I talked about it and will again soon, actually, with another Derek Bailey book. But Derek Bailey tends to do that, where it's kind of like the microfiction, where it's the different bits. It's still telling a story, but it's these different self-contained things. And so I wasn't expecting to get that here, but it was really cool. The other thing I have to mention is the pacing, because this book moves at just a blistering pace, but it never feels rushed. And I'm going to clarify, because I know that doesn't probably sound like it makes a lot of sense, but we do not spend any time messing around. There's no time twiddling thumbs. There's no time describing our characters traveling. We start, and here's the story happening. Everything there is relevant. Everything there is important. And once that's over, well, then the next chapter, we're going to start where they've already reached whatever the next destination is, or they've already reached the next time where something is going to be happening. So you're not getting any filler. There's nothing that's not super relevant here. And because each story feels contained as well, you're getting like a complete little story every time. You could honestly probably read these out of order, and while the overall story might not be as clear, but if you just open this up to a random chapter and read it, you probably could. And between it being like each little short story and just the fact that it moves very quickly and flows extremely well. Even though this isn't a super long book, but it's like 500 pages almost, and so it's not super short either, it read so quickly. I just felt like I was flying through, and I'd finish one, and then immediately like, oh, okay, I'm really excited to see what the next thing is too. And so there's a lot going on here, and it has, like I said, there's a lot of action. There's definitely some political elements to it here as well. I probably should have talked about the plot before now, but you know, we're getting to it. So anyway, but this follows Hanuvar, and he was the general of a country, Valanis, that was completely conquered, had several wars with the bigger Dervan Empire, and then after the result of the last one, the city was like completely razed, just tens and tens of thousands of people were killed, and the only survivors for the most part were taken into slavery, and he was presumed dead, but did survive, and so he's kind of on his journey to find out what's happened to his people and go from there, and so that's kind of the setup. There's a line at the beginning, too, where it's kind of briefly describing his history and saying, for most men, that's where the story would end, but that's where this one begins. So we already have the interesting thing is we're not reading through the parts with the war and everything. We have this already established character who's a bit older, and we're learning about him as we go. There's a character in here as well who is the person who originally kind of writes the story, and so they're traveling to get it too, and so we get a lot of insight, and the way you get to kind of know the character as other characters get to know him as well. And so you kind of do that and you find out more, and so it's a really interesting way to develop the character. And he's a very complex character too. He's not just super simple with like, oh, retired general kind of thing. There's a lot more to him in his motivations and what he's trying to do. And the big thing that he wants most of all is to find his daughter, find out if she's still alive, and if so, rescue her and just save as many of his people as he can. And so you already get some kind of different motivations there from the generals, but as you get further, and like the last few stories were really great for giving you glimpses of the past and also just really, really developing the character even more. And so Hanover's a really compelling character, and I really enjoyed reading about him and his stories. I'm definitely looking forward to the next one here. But so that's kind of our base thing, and then like I said, he's traveling and keeps getting pulled into things as he's going, and the different types of situations he finds himself in as well, I think, speak a lot to the character, but also it's just a cool way of introducing all kinds of mystical elements, and we do have monsters and gods and goddesses and spirits and even some dragons and things like that, and you never fully know what you're going to get because there's so many different things going on and there's all these different elements, and so it makes the world feel extremely magical, as well as just still having that sword and sorcery feel where it's not like people are having like magic fights. It's not like there's a magic system. It's just this world where sorcery and magic types of things exist, and different types of beasts and that type of thing. And so it's really fascinating to just read through and find out. And the formatting makes it just so quick to get through one part, feel like you've actually really read something. You don't have to get far at all in order to really find out how the story is going to be going. For example, this awesome scene from the cover, this is from the first chapter. Is where this is from. So like you get to kind of see things right off the bat, right away, and it flows really well because each chapter you're getting a full story, and then you keep reading to find out more and see what kind of things that the character is going to get into next. The story is also set in kind of a sort of analog of the time period of like the Punic Wars between Carthage and Rome, and you have some different analogs there. The Dervan Empire is the vast empire, and then you have Hanover, who is a general for a country. There's references to like crossing a mountain range with elephants, that kind of thing. So you get some of that historical feel, that's where like the sword and sandals part comes in as well. And so I think partially with the way that's set up as well, and even if you're not super familiar, I feel like most people at least know a little bit about that part of history because it's pretty well-known thing, especially with the crossing of the Alps in the world. So you kind of have an idea of, although it's not the same and there were definitely a lot of differences, a kind of an idea of what's happened in the past. So using something that's familiar enough, although different, to make you also feel like you know a little bit more without the author having to give you any sort of info dump at any point, because there are also no info dumps here. You find things out kind of as you're going along or through conversations, and there are very few little flashbacks, very few, and most of that is more so delivered in the annotations where the in-world narrator is kind of explaining some other little things, But so it really is just moving forward very quickly and very effectively. I really enjoyed this. I had a great time, and especially toward the end, I really had trouble putting it down because I was just got super into. Especially, it was, I think, the second to last story was just like, oh, I could see some things that were going to be happening, and there were a lot of like other things to make it even crazier. And then I'm just like, what are we going to do here? And there were so many things going on. I was so excited. I can't wait for the next book. So really definitely recommend this one. I would say for anybody who is a fan of sword and sorcery or sword and sandals kind of thing, there definitely to check this out. So, you know, if you like especially a lot of the older things, which a lot of, like I said, I haven't read, but knowing the author and their inspirations and the style, I feel comfortable saying I think people who like that sort of thing should definitely check it out. Although this is still written in a very easy to read and fairly modern way, and a more modern author that I would compare to for people who may enjoy, even though the styles are pretty different. So if you like Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne, that's also an extremely fast-paced, not really focusing on things that aren't important kind of thing. They definitely had some sword and sorcery elements and feel to it as well. So if you're looking for something fast-paced that's just getting things done, not focusing on all the description and that kind of thing, which normally I like, because the funny thing too is I love my slow burn, like descriptive, complex prose types of things, but man, is it really refreshing to get something like this that's just awesome, but also is moving really quickly. So I'd say, especially if you like things like that too, definitely check this one out, as I really think that you will enjoy it. This one is very different in feel than Ringsworn was, for sure. So I definitely, I recommend checking out Ringsworn as well. I've talked about that, but this is pretty different than that. It has a very different feel than that did. Very different style, very different type of setting, and this is definitely feels like it's, you know, further back in the past than that would have been set. So it's different there. So I guess whether or not you like Ringsworn, still definitely worth checking this one out. Although I enjoyed that one too. But yeah, really, I think if you're looking for something fast and easy to read, even though it is not the shortest of books, this is a great one to check out. And if you like the kind of story, the things that I have talked about, this is definitely a must check out for that kind of thing too, as well. Really, those are my thoughts on Lord of a Shattered Land by Howard Andrew Jones. I want to thank the author for sending this to me. Once again, really recommend that you check this out. I had such a great time with this and really enjoyed this thoroughly. It is out now, so once again, I'll have a link to it if you do want to check it out. Definitely recommend taking a look. Howard Andrew Jones is an author that I'm newer to, but after reading Ringsworn and then getting the opportunity to get an early review copy of this book, I jumped on it immediately because I was so intrigued by the description, and it did not let me down at all. So yeah, it was a great time. That's really it for this one, though. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description, as always, for the Wizardly Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, any books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun, and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.